Keep your comments to yourself. I've made a decision for your best interest.
How do you know my best interest?
I'm a grown-up and you're a child.
Stop. Mr. Sheriff, do it. Use it.
Sandra Twiggs.
Yes, ma'am.
This is Sandra Twiggs, a 59-year-old woman who is facing a charge of misdemeanor domestic assault against her 18-year-old daughter. Twig, who relies on a wheelchair due to her health conditions including asthma, diabetes, and pulmonary illness, is at the center of the situation.
I've read the probable cause affidavit.
Yes, ma'am.
You don't have to respond to each thing, but thank you.
At first, the judge appears quite friendly. The problem is, though, that certain parts of the provided information are missing. You can see how the judge is slowly getting annoyed. Despite Twig's struggles, the judge continues her rant.
I'm not going to spend all day with her interrupting me. It's your turn to speak, counsel.
Sorry, I'm done.
Miss Twiggs, just stay silent for a moment.
Following her attorney's advice, Twiggs complies as Judge Ehrlich tries to conclude the hearing. However, this action isn't enough to quell the anger brewing within Judge Ehrlich.
Do you want her to stay in the home but have no harmful contact with you?
Absolutely, yes, ma'am. Yes, Your Honor. I need her.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry.
Excuse me.
Well, Twiggs isn't offered a bond, but something a bit different. But the judge doesn't stop there.
Don't even say yes. Just listen. Can you hear me? Do you understand me?
Yes.
You have to check in with pretrial services by noon on Monday. Do you understand?
With the hearing concluded, Judge Ehrlich appears visibly frustrated yet relieved. However, the story takes a somber turn beyond this point. Sandra Twig tragically passed away in her sleep at home just 3 days later. The way Ehrlich handled Twig's case came under intense scrutiny after a video of the courtroom appearance became public. Broward County Chief Administrator Judge Jack Tudor couldn't fire Ehrlich, but he did ask her not to return to work. 2 days later, Ehrlich made the decision to resign from her position.
I have not had a drink since January 31st, 2019.
This is Monica Hawkins, aged 54, who finds herself in an unusual position, on the witness stand. Normally, she's the one presiding as a family court judge. But what led to this situation? A year prior, police pulled over a car due to a 911 call about a driver behaving erratically. To everyone's surprise, the driver turned out to be Judge Monica Hawkins. Officers noticed the scent of alcohol coming from the car, which led them to ask Hawkins to undergo a set of field sobriety tests. As you can see, these aren't going very well for her. Hawkins maintains a calm and composed demeanor at the police station, even humming a tune. However, the time has come for her to confront the situation. Yet it becomes evident that the judge is not willing to cooperate.
So what I'm going to ask is that you provide a breath sample, okay? And if you refuse, then your Ohio driver's license will automatically be suspended.
Okay.
Okay, so are you willing to provide a breath sample?
No.
No, so you're going to refuse?
Yes.
Okay. So
Hawkins is taken to the hospital after a warrant is secured, where she's restrained to undergo a blood draw. The blood test reveals a blood alcohol level of 0.199, which is significantly higher than the legal limit. In court, Judge Hawkins eventually pleads guilty to a misdemeanor charge of driving while intoxicated and receives a 90-day prison sentence, with 87 days suspended. Furthermore, a judicial misconduct complaint is filed against Hawkins, leading her to appear before the Ohio Board of Professional Conduct. This time, she approaches the situation with greater humility and cooperation.
I've spent my whole life trying to do the next best thing and be the perfect person. I have not had a drink since January 31st, 2009.
Hawkins faced public criticism for her actions, but since her offense was classified as a misdemeanor rather than a felony, she was allowed to keep her job as a family court judge.
See to it that you never see a free day in your life.
This is Arthur Haig, a church pastor, and his separated wife Lillian. Presiding over the case is Judge William Watkins. The primary issue revolves around Haig's refusal to sign a deed permitting the sale of their shared house. Before proceeding further, Judge Watkins issues a stern cautionary message to Haig.
Mr. Haig, if you say one word out of turn, you're going to jail. Do you understand?
Judge Watkins is filled with anger directed at Haig due to his belief that the pastor disclosed personal details about him to the public.
After we closed here, you went out there and talked to a reporter. This morning, I now see an article with a picture of my home. My home. Right.
Even though the article didn't mention Haig's name and was focused on Judge Watkins's role in a local homeowners association, this didn't deter him from persisting in his attack. Things eventually calmed down, but then this happens.
You swear testimony about to give you the truth, whole truth, nothing but the true self of God.
Yes.
Ms. Wallace, what's the nature of your motion?
Yep, the closing attorney is requiring his signature.
Judge Watkins ultimately rules in favor of Haig's wife, instructing him to sign the deed and also compelling him to pay a third party to expedite the process.
I'm going to direct that Mr. Haig pay him the sum of $500 for his services no later than Friday.
After considering the case, Judge Watkins comes to a decision in favor of Haig. The judge's ruling requires Haig to sign the deed and arrange for a third party to speed up the procedure.
Shut up, I didn't ask you to speak.
Upon Haig's filing of a complaint against Judge Watkins with the Judicial Inquiry Panel, the situation takes a new turn. Judge Watkins responds by recusing himself from the case, acknowledging that he overreacted. However, the issue doesn't end there. Further investigation reveals that Judge Watkins has a record of mistreating plaintiffs and attorneys in the past.
I don't travel.
Ma'am, I didn't ask you for a speech. I'm not.
You know, you're saying
Hush.
The West Virginia Court of Appeals reviews Watkins's case and determines his guilt on 24 counts, which include using inappropriate language and neglecting his responsibilities, like not properly filing protective orders. As a consequence, Watkins is suspended without pay for the remainder of his term, lasting 4 years. This is Wealthy and Rogerio Silva, the parents in issue, divorced 3 years ago. Despite their divorce, they share custody of their 12-year-old daughter, who lives mostly with her mother. Rogerio expresses his dissatisfaction with the fact that he is not receiving the visitation time specified in the court order. Adding to the complication, his ex-wife claims that his daughter is unwilling to spend time with him. Before diving into the main topic of visitation, Wealthy Silva expresses her personal concerns against her former spouse.
He has not paid child support. It was November, December, and January that I did not get child support or alimony. Also, none of the medical or...
Judge Rena Hughes appeared prepared to shift the focus away from the matters not directly related to visitation. However, Wealthy Silva had different intentions and was not ready to move on just yet.
and dental was filed. I remember, I believe it was 5 court dates ago, and I have submitted receipts.
The attention is redirected back to the topic of visitation, as the court aims to establish plans for a dinner between the father and daughter in the upcoming week. But the lawyer has something to add to the situation. However, the child's mother is severely concerned. Take a look.
She refuses to go. What am I to do? Because this is really not
We'll
good
be
for
here
the
on a
child.
motion to hold you in contempt.
Is she going to have to ride in a car with him?
Yes.
The judge then starts threatening them out of nowhere.
There is contempt, and if there is withholding of the child, we will have a trial. Do you understand me clearly? You will lose custody.
Fast forward 2 months, and the parents return to court, once again grappling with visitation issues involving their 12-year-old daughter. But this time, as the hearing commences, something unexpected happens. Judge Hughes issues a unique directive. She asks all adults to leave the courtroom so she can have a private conversation with the young girl. Simultaneously, the courtroom cameras are turned off. Even though the daughter has her own preferences, an intriguing development unfolds. Just 9 minutes later, with the father back in the courtroom, Judge Hughes makes a significant decision. She grants him temporary full custody over their daughter.
You don't understand. I love her. And I'm gonna miss her so much. Please don't do this to me.
I've made a decision for your best interest.
How do you know my best interest?
I'm a grown-up and you're a child.
The court issues a stern warning to the young girl, stating that if she persists in opposing the decision, she might be relocated to a children's shelter.
I don't want to be with...
The girl's mother is forbidden from visiting the courtroom again and faces contempt charges for allegedly withholding visits. She files a complaint with the Nevada Commission on Judicial Discipline, alleging that Judge Hughes violated their civil rights. Hughes is found guilty of several crimes, including punitively favoring the father by the commission. Despite a public rebuke, the punishment is eventually removed after a successful appeal at the Nevada Supreme Court. Finally, the parents are given shared custody of their daughter. This is Burhan Chowdhury, a 72-year-old man who found himself in trouble for letting the grass and weeds on his property grow uncontrollably. This violated a local regulation against noxious plants and vegetation. The circumstances were compounded by the fact that Chowdhury was undergoing treatment for lymph node cancer, which left him too weak to tend to the yard work. During the time the violation occurred, Chowdhury's son, Shabir, who typically maintained the property, was out of the country. When Shabir returned to the U.S., he promptly took care of the overgrowth. Recognizing Burhan Chowdhury's health condition and the fact that this was his first offense, both father and son are hoping for leniency from Judge Alexis Kropp in today's hearing.
You have a ticket for failing to keep the fence, walkway, sidewalk, or alley free of weeds, trees, or other nuisance vegetation. It's a first offense civil infraction. You can plead responsible.
Chowdhury's struggle with breathing is evident as he explains how his illness and the rainy weather had a negative impact on his landscaping. However, despite his challenges, the court shows no willingness to grant him any leniency.
If I could give you jail time on this, I would.
The judge isn't displaying any forgiveness. In fact, quite the opposite. She's discussing the potential of putting an elderly cancer patient in jail for a minor civil offense. Chowdhury is surprised by the judge's anger, prompting his son Shabir to step in and clarify his father's situation. Shabir explains that the weeds have already been removed.
Oh, okay. Is it, ma'am, forgivable because my father is currently sick and we cleaned that after...
You see that photo?
Yes.
I am very sick, man.
That is shameful. Shameful.
As the session wraps up, Judge Kropp warns Chowdhury that he could face jail time if he comes back to her courtroom. The incident quickly gained attention, going viral within a week, and many people were appalled by Judge Kropp's behavior towards Chowdhury. An online petition garnered over 250,000 signatures, urging for her removal from the bench. In response, the judge issued an apology and self-reported to the Judicial Tenure Commission for her actions during the case. Subsequently, the Hamtramck City Council decided to officially condemn Judge Kropp's actions. Chowdhury paid his $100 fine just 2 days after the court hearing. This is Cassandra Jackson, who seeks a protective order in a Cincinnati court, which is commonly sought by domestic abuse survivors. She's been told she missed the deadline, which irritates her. The dispute disturbs surrounding procedures, and despite her pleadings, she is refused and is forced to leave. Judge Bachman pursues her and confronts her even inside the courtroom. The finale of the narrative is shaped by key moments. Bachman grabs Jackson's shoulder as she attempts to change her direction down a corridor. As they approach the courtroom, they maintain eye contact. Jackson seeks a restraining order to protect herself and her children from an alleged abusive relationship. Bachman leads Jackson to the jury box and threatens him with contempt charges. More harassment by court personnel ensues, prompting cops to intervene as Jackson attempts to leave. Requiring extra help, Jackson has to be physically restrained. She resists and puts up a struggle, but eventually, officers manage to handcuff her. She's then escorted out of the courtroom due to her behavior. The situation worsens as Jackson is forcibly carried to the booking area, where formal charges are filed against her. Officers bind Jackson to a chair in an attempt to restrain her resistance. Despite the limitations, she continues to defy them. Jackson is firmly tied in a customized chair after another effort to defy cops. She is then taken to Holden Marshall. Surprisingly, she only serves 2 days out of a 10-day sentence. Due to reasonable circumstances, the presiding court chooses to dismiss the contempt charge and the remaining sentence. As the public becomes aware of the tape showing Bachman following Jackson and physically interfering, Jackson pursues legal action against Bachman by filing a civil complaint. As a result, the magistrates have been warned that he must either resign or face dismissal. Bachman has decided to retire from his job. As a result, if Bachman has to visit a Hamilton County courthouse in the future, he must do it as a private individual. This is Delvin King, a 25-year-old who is self-representing on weapons charges after being found with a regulated firearm during a traffic stop. Just a few months earlier, he fled the courthouse and evaded police during a preliminary hearing for the same charges. King is now required to wear a remote control stun cuff on his leg during court proceedings due to his previous escape. As he delivers a prepared argument, a new complication arises.
Stop.
We then turn our attention to Robert Neely, age 72, who is occupying the judge's bench. Despite retiring the previous year, he has been called back to preside over cases on a part-time basis. The hearing begins with a rocky beginning as Delvin King asserts his affiliation with the Moorish American Group, a faction of the anti-government sovereign citizen movement. He argues that his true identity is not Delvin King. As Judge Neely outlines the process of jury selection, King persists in reading from his prepared statement, which raises questions about the court's jurisdiction.
Stop. Mr. Sheriff, do it. Use it.
For those who might have overlooked it, during the proceedings, Judge Neely directs the courtroom deputy to activate the stun cuff on King's leg as he persists in speaking despite orders to stop. The deputy approaches King calmly, who appears to be unaware of his presence, and gently moves his chair aside. Judge Neely then decides to exit the courtroom briefly, leaving King on the courthouse floor in distress due to the activated stun cuff.
All right, I'm going to take 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
After a short break, Judge Neely resumes the hearing, and King continues to present his own defense. Eventually, King agrees to probation before trial, leading to a 2-year prison sentence for the firearms charge, most of which he had already served. This arrangement prevents an official conviction on his record. However, Judge Robert Neely's situation unfolds differently. The Maryland Court of Appeals promptly revoked Neely's judicial authority once the courtroom video was made public. Later, he faced a misdemeanor charge for violating civil rights, to which he pleaded guilty. This resulted in a year of probation, mandated anger management classes, and a $5,000 fine. Consequently, Neely was permanently barred from holding a judicial position,